Good afternoon, John.
Hey, Marty.
John Donovan, Marty Keller for our biweekly podcast. And this time I'm happy to say we're both coming to you from Sacramento, California.
Yes, we are.
I think John's got a new travel trailer or van or whatever you call it.
Yeah, Sprinter van.
And so John's driving around California. We're happy that he's here in our town. And so welcome to Sacramento. This is our first podcast of October. So here we go.
Here we go.
So before we turned on the record button, we were talking about that you had a notion about the idea of willpower, and I'd like you to share a little bit with us as to what you're noticing, what you're thinking.
Yeah.
And how it relates to our accountability practice.
This concept of willpower, like somebody has it and can use it, and it's almost used like a accusation, like you don't have the willpower, and you get blamed for whatever behavior you find yourself in that pattern. And actually,
particularly, I'm assuming with respect to being able to deal with addictions and
addiction, or
like I don't have the willpower to say no to that next can of beer.
Right. Or to not scream and yell at my partner when I just got through saying I'll never do that again.
Right.
And I believe that the way we use it and the way it's phrased, it's backwards. We use it as willpower, as something we do consciously. What I'm coming to understand, or what makes more sense to me based on my experience of my life, is that it's the power of my will creates where I find myself. And the will is the accumulation of past experiences. That's what I talk about, the pool of information in the subconscious. And when I talk about it, it's usually, or when I bring it up, it's usually about all the family of origin dysfunction and trauma that's stored in the subconscious. And the subconscious manifests in the world in the present moment. So what we do in the accountability process is not try to fix people or get it right or do it better. We simply own where we find ourselves. I say I'm mean. Stating where I'm at, which happens to be the result of the power of my will. And I observe that, say it out loud, I'm mean, no blame, no judgment. Feel that, what that brings to me, the frequency or the feeling, wherever it is in my body. And then say, I intend to be kind. That intention to be kind goes back into the subconscious and reframes the trauma, validates the trauma. I want to even say, in my experience, heals the trauma that caused the meanness. Because for me to be mean is in alignment with what happened to me as a child. Being mean keeps people away from me, keeps me I want to say in my mind safe, but it's not really in my conscious mind, it's in my subconscious mind. So the power of will creates where you find yourself, your beliefs, your perceptions. And I want to say what I mean by perceptions. What I mean by perceptions is how I see myself in relationship to the outside world, people, places, and things. Well, actually, outside world and myself. So my perception about how I see the world comes from my past experience. There's a term in recovery, denial. They made a acronym for it. Don't even notice I am lying. Well, it it's another accusation. Denial means I don't know. I have not a clue. Denial means I don't know. It doesn't mean I'm doing something on purpose. Um, so the phrase willpower is backwards. I'm an advocate for turning it around and saying the power of will creates my reality. So if that's true for me, I simply accept where I find myself in the present moment and name it. And when I first started, it was naming a lot of character defects and behavior that was destructive, dismissive, and demeaning, and simply saying the truth. I'm dismissive, I'm demeaning. Um, Taking a breath and saying, I intend to communicate cooperatively, I intend to communicate with compassion. That intent heals the subconscious pool of information where the trauma has been sitting, festering. It validates, yes, yes, thank you for paying attention. And then simply find myself in a different behavior without conscious thought. And this is like, I simply find myself in a different behavior, and I want to add a different awareness, a different perception of how I relate. Now, when I say different, when I first started this process, the what happened to me that was different is that I realized how much I was pervasive my tendency to be violent was. So um, that was different, which is good news, bad news. Holy cow, I'm like every thought I have is violent and or dismissive or demeaning. And the good news is now I can do something about it. So, um, okay, I kind of lost my train of thought. There's a meat bee flying around in here. Hold on a second, I'm gonna open the door.
So I'm wondering if we have a principle in our work, accountability work, which is I'm always getting what I want. And
Yeah,
I'm getting a sense that that's related to what you're talking about.
yeah, it is.
In fact, as you were talking, I was thinking the German word for want is Will. I
Get out of
want,
here.
I want in German is ich will. And so there's a relationship, it seems to me, to these dynamics in our sub and conscious minds.
I'm just blown away right now. Yeah, yeah. If I have a subconscious uh, fear of closeness to people, what I want or will is to be away from.
Correct.
And we're talking subconscious information, so it's not in my consciousness that I'm standing next to this person and I want to be away from them. I will. And in my in my experience, when I did get close to a woman, I found myself backing away. I found myself out the door. I found myself screaming, yelling at something that was innocuous. There was nothing. And based on our conversation, the power of will trying to keep me safe because I got the major pain administered to me by my mother, that this is in alignment with my safety below my conscious level, which is really, really confusing, because I got to come up with a rational reason.
Right.
And it's either it's got to be me, and it's probably not me. So it's got to be her. And her turned into all of them, which now doesn't make sense because they all can't. It's like okay, how do I figure this out? Well, that's what we're talking about.
Well,
It's
I'd like to share my experience because I think it absolutely reinforces what you're saying, which is I would get into a relationship with a guy, and without fail, at about the 2 year mark, he would start being uninteresting. There would start to be um, some kind of rift in my awareness. It's like this ain't working.
yep.
It's like wow. Now, I've never really explored what the 2 year thing is about. Maybe nothing, but it was like without clockwork. After 2 years, I'm out of here. So there was that willpower. It's like this is too dangerous. This is not tenable. I don't want to be here anymore. And so I would just end it. I would say, this ain't working for me anymore.
Wow.
Or in one case, um, the guy got really, really sick. And when he came out of the hospital, he said, I need to recover. I need to be on my own for a while. It's like, oh, thank you.
Yeah.
It's like my subconscious was brilliant enough to engineer that.
See, it's amazing, and we can come up with a myriad of examples. I can come up with a myriad of examples from my own life
Sure.
about where I found myself at the moment that really didn't make any sense based on like um, being infatuated or falling in love with a woman, and that somehow over a period of time, um, mine was about 3 years. It would go away. It's like um, okay, so now I know there's something in my subconscious that whatever the healthy aspect of the next step in this relationship, I'm not going to do that. And that's not a conscious thought on my mind. It's
Exactly.
in retrospect, whatever the next step is in the maturation of this relationship, I'm not able to, or it scares the shit out of me,
Right.
um, or I don't know. I don't
And in
know.
the subconscious mind, in the mind of that little kid, the unhealed little kid, that translates for me at least to I don't want to.
Right,
And so I'm always getting what I want. So what I want is to be out of this.
right.
And so again, we can we can certainly share the anecdotes of how the will to be extricated worked itself out in each individual circumstance.
Let me give another example. Yes, I want to do that. And another example is I find myself in an abusive relationship. Now, this flip flop between I want to say perpetrator or the giver of the abuse, and then other relationships, I found myself receiving abuse. And at one point in my recovery, um, I realized that I didn't know what abuse was. I had normalized this
Right.
behavior. Um,
So when you say you didn't know what it was, what I'm hearing you say is you were abusing and you weren't aware that you were abusing.
I didn't consider it abuse.
Right.
No,
Right.
nor when they were doing it to me did I consider it abuse.
Right.
Um, yeah, this is just it continues to amaze me the power that this subconscious enacts in everybody's life um, without our awareness of it. Now the accountability tree, the process of owning where you find yourself, no blame, no judgment, unravels this morass or this mess or this perception that is confusing and gives me choice in the moment, gives me availability to say, oh, this is happening. It's not about what's happening in the current reality. This is something from my past. If I own the behavior, take a breath, I know through experience that whatever that is, whether I remember it or not, that there's the edge taken off. It's reframed, it's healed. It's like me standing in front of my grandson, him frustrated that his mom's leaving, or sad or scared, telling me that he doesn't like me and he wants me to go home. Well, that's in alignment with what he's feeling and does not know how to express.
Right.
So I say, I validate what he's saying. His feeling body gets validated so that he knows that he can express without being chastised, humiliated, ridiculed, or ostracized, um, which I didn't have as a child. Okay. Wow.
Well, and most of us don't have.
Correct. Well, yeah, that's where we're all meeting all the time.
Yeah.
It's
But
like,
I would suggest that this most of us is not most of us in recovery. It's most of us in humanity.
yes, yes. Gabriel Mate estimates 96% of people are suffering from complex post-traumatic stress disorder. I think he's being generous. I think he's being hella generous. I don't know of anybody that doesn't have some trauma that's affecting their life unbeknownst to them, whatever it may be. It may be, and it's on a continuum. It could be on a scale of 1 to 10. People are 2, 3, 4. My life was at 8, 9, 10 most of the time of the effects of the trauma.
Right. Well, I think that's useful to point out. Um, I I actually do have a couple of friends that I've met who, like, try as I might, I can't find the trauma,
Right.
and so they're in that 3 to 4% that Mate points out.
Oh,
Um, but
okay.
but it may also be that it's just at a very low level
Yes.
because it's hard for me to believe that everyone gets out of it or that anybody gets out of it. As I've pointed out before, birth itself is traumatic. So
Yeah.
we start in an act of trauma. And again, no blame or judgment.
No, no.
For the newcomer, you might hear these words and think that there's something wrong because we may not be specifying. So when we use words like violence or trauma, we're not judging those as good or bad. They're just experiences. And
Experience.
and I think
And
that, John, part of what your point about the power of will is that we get to determine what those experiences mean. I mean, we're meaning making machines, so we take that experience, and the way I understand this is because we had to react to the climate, the environment in which we were raised and acculturated,
mhm,
and we did not have tools of rationality to analyze and make full-fledged adult choices about how to respond. We had to respond purely on an emotional level. And that in the responding, creating a defense against, so I basically said, although I never said these words, I basically said something, or my body said, I'm never going to experience this again.
correct.
I'm not going to let this happen to me again. Even if I have to replace it with some other kind of pain or suffering, I'm not going to have this one.
Right.
And this one is almost always that pain of what we call abandonment. I was working with somebody in a meeting the other night, and he actually identified it as feeling lost and drowning into the deep sea.
Oh, wow.
And that's like, whoever wants to feel that.
Yeah.
I mean, particularly a little kid who can't go, well, this is about, my parents are passing on their trauma, and no, none of that's there.
One of the,
All that's there is the imperative to survive.
yes. And a feeling of disappointment, devastation, concern, fear, whatever the feeling might be. I have come to identify when somebody says, I feel shame, I feel guilt. What I'm what I'm coming to understand is that it is a feeling that that little child's not supposed to have, which is most any feeling. So it's couched under an umbrella term, shame. Um, a guy came into my office one time, and I was working at a homeless place, and he said, I'm depressed. And I said, oh, what's going on? Well, I lost my job, I lost my house, I lost my wife, I lost my vehicle, and everything's in the toilet, and I'm living in a 1-year residential homeless. I said, that's depressing. Of course you're depressed. Oh my God. But what we want to do is move away from that. That depressing, that gives me information about where I'm at so that I can make a decision about where I want to go. If I lose the depression, now if it's clinical, if it's 6 months, I'm not a doctor and get all the help you need. And I see the value in a pharmaceutical with somebody who is clinically depressed. Okay. And if something happens to you that's chronic and you're depressed, yes, it's depressing. So feel the depression. I'm depressed, and we could take that to the accountability tree. I'm depressed. Take a breath. And it's like that little kid inside says, yes, finally you're listening to me. Oh my God, I'm in here. It's dark in here and nobody's listening to me. And this feeling, this sloughing, they call it relief, this healing of that little child, for me, little boy, says, oh, you're finally paying attention. I said, I intend to take on my life. I intend to be proactive, or I intend to be kind, or I intend to forgive myself. And then that intent goes into the subconscious, reframes it, heals. I don't know, it could be a myriad of things that happen to cause depression, heals it, and something shifts, and I'm different. Automatically, I start noticing different things. I start acting differently. I start perceiving differently. I maybe the difference is I take a breath in a startle moment where before I would beat myself up, just instantly beat myself up for being stupid or weaker. And I just take a breath. That's different. We're just looking for different because the different now enables us to see and choose. Oh my God, that felt good. Maybe do it again. I'm depressed. Oh, yeah, I intend to be kind to myself. And then the outside world, the inside world changes automatically. And that's my experience from doing the accountability process. What I was looking at before that I saw as a threat was actually the thing I was looking for. And to give you an example, I'd come home late and the person I was with said, where the hell have you been? I see it as a threat, emasculation, and I'd scream and yell, don't you know who I am? I bribe the money. I don't have to answer to you. And then I come home and the same thing is said, where the hell have you been? And I see somebody who cares about me, who's worried about me. Oh my God, that's what I'm looking for, is somebody who cares. And I perceive it differently. Let me tell you where I've been. And I want to apologize for not calling you because I see that you're worried and upset. Oh my God. Same thing happened. The accountability process, owning the violence, dismissal, ignoring, redefining, demeaning behavior, changed the subconscious pool of information, and I automatically perceive things differently. It's just amazing. And the power that's in that will now is the same power that was in that will before, unhealed. Same power.
Right.
Now it is my intent to be kind, it is my intent to forgive myself, it is my intent, something new in it, and it's searching, and that power is bringing me to the awareness of this moment again. And I want more of that, Marty. I want more of that. It is
Right.
exciting. Oh my God.
Well, I'd like to point out that, or correct me if I'm wrong, but the capacity to perceive things differently is unattached from how the other person may be intending it.
Correct.
I mean, your partner still could have been trying to make you bad, emasculate you, but you're not hearing it that way
Right.
because you've created an intention to hear things in this way.
Yes.
And then the power of the will, which is resident in that subconscious, um, is now producing that, which we now said we intend to have. We want kindness. We want to feel connected. We want to feel validated.
I like that. I like that word you use, resident. It almost seems like there's somebody in there messing with me. It's like
Well,
an entity. And I think that's pretty much where they got Satan, Lucifer, the devil made me do it, is that subconscious pool of information is wounded, simply looking out for me, which means I stick a needle in my arm or I drink
Right.
for 30 years.
Well,
I'm going to be okay. And I have no idea this is going on. So
right.
it's got to be a person.
Well, the truth is that it's never about the other person. So when I'm experiencing that horrible duality of I want to be loved and I don't
Correct.
simultaneously, that's really about me.
Yep.
And so that the sense that there's a demon inside always shows up for us, shows up for me, as if there is a separate entity.
Yeah.
And there's only one of me.
Yeah, right.
But the power of the mind to create that objectifying of ourselves, as we can then objectify others,
Correct.
creates a defense against the subject, that this is actually me that's wounded and incomplete and powerless and incapable. And that when we do the accountability practice, we are moving back to essentially
Integrating.
Reintegrating. And let's see, Mate has another word for this. See if I can find it. Self-retrieval, he calls it.
Yeah.
We're in the process of retrieving all of ourselves and bringing it back into unity that is always there. The unity has never disappeared, but the power of our mind and our emotion to create that separation has generated an experience that there's an incubus. Remember that word? There's an incubus inside of me.
Yeah, I remember that word.
I have to get rid of. So I make myself an enemy.
Yep.
And that commitment, now go to the will, that will to generate that enmity, or as we say in Adult Children of Alcoholics, we choose to live our lives from the point of view of a victim. I'm a victim of this incubus living inside of me.
Right.
Is alive and well until we have the grace to go, wait a minute. All of my strategies to get rid of this are not working. None of them is working. I need help. I need to do something else.
Right.
And that's what got me to my first Adult Children of Alcoholics meeting.
Yeah.
It's like I was having that pattern of dating relationships on a smaller scale, and I kept dating the same kind of person.
Yep.
Who after the initial joy and sheen of getting together suddenly became unavailable. It's okay. So my therapist said, well, you'd be willing to notice the common denominator of all of
this. In every one of those relationships.
Who, me?
Yeah, I didn't like that either when I was told that. It's like, wait a minute.
Who, me?
I'm the good guy. I'm the nice guy.
Right. It's those people.
Yeah.
They don't appreciate me.
Yeah. I bend over backwards for them.
Right. Actually, they appreciated me perfectly.
Yes.
So that's that's what getting into recovery offers us, because we can't do it on our own. In the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous, the first step is we recognize that we have become powerless over alcohol. Our lives have become unmanageable. Powerless. I can't do anything about this. No matter what I do, it doesn't work.
Right.
And that's an implicit act of love. That may be the first time that I said to myself, I give myself permission to be what I am, powerless.
Yeah.
Instead of trying to change it with all of my might.
Yeah. Wow. All that was well said. It's the subconscious trauma is a benevolent energy looking out for our well-being, although it's acting on misinformation. And the misinformation I received as a child was I wasn't enough, I was wrong, there was something bad about me, and I needed to fix it and be better. I needed to be a good boy. And I kept trying to figure out ways to be good and kept compounding and re traumatizing myself. So, yeah, this is like, oh my God.
Well, an element that Mate brings in his new book, which we've talked about it on this podcast before. We don't necessarily talk about it in our meetings, but is that all of that misinformation that we received as infants came from outside of us.
Yes.
And it came from the culture, which itself is traumatized and wounded and cannot help but replicate and pass this on until till we as a whole find this healing. And so that's the Mate's work here is like, it's not just us as individuals, it's also us as humanity.
Right.
And that's what I take on in my book, which is, okay, so how could accountability practice be applied at the mass level? Can it? First of all, can it? Of course, I say yes, it can.
We live in a community of people who are actualizing that,
Right.
who are accountable, or wanting to learn about accountability, or interested in it. And I struggle with this too, about the whole community and the mess we find ourselves in. And I take a breath and go back to me first. Without whatever I got, I give. So I'm gonna take care of this first. And as I'm doing this, this is part of the whole, so it changes the whole. And every time I say that, it like, okay, but let's get more people. I still want to like,
Yeah,
and I'm
yeah.
like, this is powerful. And every person I talk to, there's, what is it, 7 degrees or 6 degrees of separation. They talk to, they talk to, they talk
Right.
to. Um, and so, yeah, I'm all for this.
Dan and I were having a conversation last week about what essentially is the reason for our gut check meeting on Wednesdays, which is that the body and mind are just one thing.
Yeah.
And Dan was lamenting the fact that we don't have a word for that unity. So like Ken Wilber even says body mind. So he takes the two words and slams them together and makes one, but it's still conceptually dividing.
Right.
So let's just say, okay, the body and the mind are one thing. They're two dynamics of a singularity. So put that aside. It's also equally true that each individual is part of this entire humanity. We don't have a word for that. So we use the word humanity, and that sort of means everybody, and maybe kind of including me.
Right.
And then we use the word I as if I am somehow separate from humanity. So the part of the work that we're doing is we're leaning into an appreciation of how to experience these things in their true nature. And part of it is that, the same process that allows me to initiate healing through the accountability practice, which is to tell the truth about where I am and feel that truth, is to me a universal process. That process can be applied to all of this. It's like, okay, I think I'm separate from the rest of the human race. Okay, how does that feel? And begin to use the process, because the process, for those of you who might be watching this for the first time, the process is always to start with just telling the truth of where I find myself in the moment. Mate calls it doing an audit, a self audit. it's kind of interesting. The language that he uses in this particular chapter I've been reading is very similar to the accountability practice. He uses slightly different words,
Right.
but he says the same thing. We have to start with where we are. And again, that's the other brilliance of the process is that it doesn't matter where you are. It doesn't matter if you're 15 or 85. You can start with where you are and begin to explore who we really are
Yeah.
behind the belief systems.
Yeah.
Begin to appreciate the belief systems are benevolent, as you said. They were put in place for our protection.
Right. And
And
we
that,
are re-informing it.
correct.
And that's what I mean by reframing. Um, and then the outcome, or the where I am now, it changes. It has to. It's in alignment with what's my total experience is. If my total experience now includes being accountable only on me in front of 250 people, taking a breath, nobody says, "Oh, you stupid," or "Why'd you do that," or questions or judges, and I'm allowed to experience that feeling of the result of that, which is impactful. That hurts, and I feel it. I intend to be kind to myself. I didn't stop hurting people until I felt hurt. I actually recognized hurt, devastation, destruction. And then I thought, oh my God, I don't want to do this to other people. I do not want to do this to other people. This hurts. This is, oh my God, fracturing. It's energetically fracturing. No, no. So,
Well, it's interesting that you say that because my journey into this work has come to help me see that when we use words, and you said shame, for example, shame,
yeah,
grief, um,
guilt.
guilt, all those terms are actually one remove from just hurt,
Yes.
just hurt. And I think I've shared this on the podcast before, but just briefly, I was going through a difficult phase of a relationship with a good friend of mine, and I realized that he was doing behaviors to me that just felt like I'd been punched in the stomach.
Hmm.
And I was in denial about it. And I was like blaming myself, what am I doing wrong or whatever? And I was working with a therapist at the time, and she said, how do you feel? And it's like, oh my God. And then once I came aware of that, John, I became aware that that's what I did to myself for years and years and years and years.
Yeah.
The same kind of just, using myself as a punching bag and
Yeah.
then not allowing myself to feel it, but substituting other emotions for that
Yes.
that primeval ouch, that primeval that hurts, and I don't have to call it anything else. It just, and if I can experience that, if I can allow myself to experience that, then again, I'm in the truth, and I'm now in the possibility of what do I want? Well,
Right.
I can have anything once I experience that. I have the power to have more of it.
Yep.
I have the power to have utter calm and peace. I have the power to have joy and a sense of adventure. I mean, anything's possible, but none of that's possible until I can experience that original pain that I've been avoiding.
I'm thinking of Viktor Frankl in the concentration camps and Man's Search for Meaning. I don't think there's anywhere in that book where he says, I wasn't hungry. I wasn't afraid.
Right.
I wasn't terrified. I wasn't sad for what I saw. I wasn't devastated by humanity. And he found meaning in that. Um, yeah, that's what we're talking about.
Yeah.
Not about changing what they're doing, It's about me being in what's happening to me in the moment. So
But this is where it gets a little mystical, because we're not to the point in our evolution of consciousness where we can, at least I'm not, where I can point to the mechanism. But it's true, as you said earlier, and that just when you talked about Frankel, it made me think about him, is that when he was able to maintain his sense of this moral meaning, he was giving a gift to all of humanity,
yes,
even though he was, quote, just one person, end quote,
yes,
because he was both just one person and he was human being.
right,
So when we do this work, and there are people doing similar kinds of work all over the planet, I have no doubt,
yes,
that even though right now you can look out at the world and go, oh my God, we're going to hell in a handbasket. Maybe the appearances are deceiving. Maybe the appearances are deceiving, or maybe whatever's happening is happening, and I have a choice of how I'm going to perceive it and be with it.
yes,
So, for example, I have set my intention. I intend to create a world of joy, peace, freedom, community, and health. It doesn't mean there isn't a war in Ukraine.
no,
It
it does
doesn't
not.
mean that the Nord Stream pipeline in the Baltic didn't blow up. It
Right,
doesn't mean that the price of gas isn't $7. What it means is I intend to understand all of that stuff in a world of joy, peace, freedom, community, and health.
yes, and my contribution to it, and the word foresight, to hold this, and I don't know, people have been doing it throughout history, holding something in the face of. The first one that comes to my mind is Gandhi and Jesus, and Mother Teresa, holding it and then acting, being proactive, becoming proactive. Um, wow.
Well, and there are people who hold these visions and they don't become proactive. I think of I think of monasteries. Where people have just they've gone off the grid
Yeah.
in order to hold a spiritual space for the entire planet,
Yes.
and
Yes.
that's their action.
That's their action. Yeah. There's a mountain, I think, in China where it's populated with stations, and there's always people praying continuously.
Yeah,
Person leaves the space, another person goes in.
yeah.
Uh, yeah.
Or we have that. You put me in mind of I'm part of the Unity movement, and we've had a silent prayer vigil going on for 140 years, 24/7.
Wow. Wow. I didn't know
Yeah,
that.
yeah,
Oh,
yeah. There's somebody in the prayer chapel all the time, holding the prayer intentions that people send in to Silent Unity in consciousness.
wow.
So, what's the contribution? Well, here's the deal. My mind is not developed enough to be able to explain it.
Yeah, not either.
But what I do know is my experience in doing this accountability work with you for the last 10 years or so has utterly changed my relationship with myself and the world.
Yes.
And it's all come from what I want. It hasn't come, it's not nothing you told me to do or how to
Right.
be, nothing
Right.
anybody in any meeting, accountability or adult children of alcoholics. No, it came from, I learned from this process that I can reach the still point of my soul through my body, through
Yes.
allowing the feelings that are seeking to express in the moment to do so with my attention.
Yes.
And when I give myself attention, I'm giving myself affirmation and validation, which is what the little kid inside of me has always wanted. It's all he's ever wanted,
Yes.
is to feel accepted and validated.
Yeah.
And for whatever reason, I didn't get that as a kid. No blame or judgment. I don't know why. It just didn't happen. I can tell a story about it, but I don't think that serves much of a function.
Right.
What I can say is, for whatever reason, that's what I felt, and then that's how I behaved toward myself for decades until I came into this practice, and then I was able to learn. First of all, I didn't really have a clue about the subconscious. I mean, I had formal information from my psychology courses and from some passing acquaintanceship with Jungian therapy, that there was a subconscious, but no one ever taught me what that meant in actual daily life. What does that mean
Right.
right now?
Yeah.
And
What,
I got to learn that from this work.
yeah. What that means is everybody's treating me exactly the way I'm asking them to. And I just don't know that I'm like
Yeah,
making this request that you get in my face and say I'm stupid. But there's something in me that that's a good idea.
yeah,
Subconscious.
yeah. Among many things.
I want to say this about the subconscious, albeit sub, not conscious. It is a manifester. It it is
Yes.
a producer. It is a producer of action. It's the power of will manifesting in my life in this moment.
Yep.
I am going to pay attention to what this moment feels like, looks like, be like. And if I see any accountability tree, that's right. I run to the accountability tree. Somebody said they're getting some 2x4s and some plywood, making a tree house in that accountability tree. I'm living there because I see the benefit of it. Even as counterintuitive as it is, name your character defect, no blame, no judgment. Oh my God, the benefits are I just legion.
Well, and ultimately, as you do this work, it ceases being counterintuitive. It
Right?
starts to be intuitive because it actually is.
Yes,
It's only counterintuitive to our defense mechanism,
correct.
which has created a world it's like, don't mess with this little rickety little defense system I've got here to keep me safe from love and intimacy and risk and all those things.
People, if somebody comes back from a war zone and they're walking down the street and there's a loud noise and he drops to the ground, nobody's calling them stupid.
Right.
Nobody's saying, "Oh, what's wrong with you?" We know that that's a subconscious reaction to something that he's been alerted to, that his body needs to get down, and it's going to do it whether he thinks, no, the next loud noise, I'm standing up. What the
Right.
hell? Just make one. It's boom, he hits the ground again, or he startles. Um, and that startle effect is our subconscious taking care of us, looking out for our best interest. Only when it equates to me screaming and yelling about the toast, it doesn't make sense. There's no sense in that. If I drop to the ground and every time the toast is burnt, they go, okay, you need help. But it's like uh, I'm screaming, yelling, slamming things, and accusing people, calling people names. Oh, subconscious manifesting in the present moment from unhealed trauma. If I know that I'm mean, toast is burnt, I'm screaming and yelling. That's violent. I'm violent. No excuse, no rationale. That was violent. Take a breath. It is my intent to be nonviolent. Goes into my subconscious, starts working out a way for that to happen for me because I can't figure it out. And
Right.
I'm not going to figure it out. I'm going to use this process where I affect a change in that power mechanism inside me. I'm going to affect a change in that will and pay attention to what I'm doing right now. And one of the places I'm getting my attention is the merging lane on the freeway. I still have a lot of judgment, condescending, and oh, if these people only knew they would stuff. And I here it is again. I get okay. I'm going to be calm. It is my intent to be calm. It is my intent to be non-judgmental. It is my intent to go with the flow. It is my intent to be a defensive driver. It is my intent, and it's working. Amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting. One of the principles that always gets the biggest pushback in when we share these in our accountability practice meetings is I'm always getting what I want.
Yeah.
And it's because people don't necessarily get the way the subconscious minds work. It's so, because people will say, well, I don't want that.
Right.
I don't want, I don't want to be mean.
Right.
I don't want to hurt anybody. And yet I do.
Yep.
So we go, well, okay. So in your conscious mind, you say you don't want to, and yet you produce it. So where do you think that might come from?
Right.
And we introduced the idea of the subconscious mind, and then my little twist is, and if the subconscious mind is 90% of our minds, then 9 to 1 is a lot of weight.
Yep.
And so if 9/10 of your mind is wanting something violent, and 1/10 of your mind thinks you're the Buddha and everything should be nice and hunky-dory, then the Buddha loses.
Yep. Yep. Every time.
Until we allow the need to create violence to surface into consciousness. And then we can work with it. We can actually apply the gift of the conscious mind to this work. Otherwise, the conscious mind is just, it's the tail that wags the dog.
Right. Yep.
The subconscious mind being the dog that wags the tail, to make that image clear. But the beauty of it is that the subconscious mind is utterly accessible. It's not hidden forever. It's not a secret. It's just something we can't see until we learn to see it.
Exactly. And believes what you tell it, especially when you're telling it from a feeling tone. Like, I mean, that's, oh my God, there's a feeling happening, and it's a constellation of events that happen in my life that creates this free, I intend to be kind. There's power in that feeling tone. That's how it gets embodied. My pain and trauma was embodied through a feeling. The healing comes through being embodied through a feeling. And then I automatically see, hear, taste, touch, smell differently, and have access to information through my emotional feeling body that I had cut off. Now I got all kinds of information in this quiet moment that it's, I think Rudolf Steiner calls it accessing imagination, inspiration, and intuition. And things seem to flow. It's like right now, I'm not thinking. I'm here with you in this conversation, and I listen to myself say what I say. I listen to what you say, and then feel, and then something bubbles up in me, and I get an association or a thing that would add, or and there's this flow happening. It's like hit the button, Marty. Let's go. I want to get in the flow, and we start. This happens. It's amazing.
Well, we have a few minutes before it's time to wrap up. So would you be willing to address, particularly for the newcomer, the issue of that for most of us, even when we access this subconscious pool of information and our body relaxes into it, that there's still more work to be done?
Oh
That
my,
this doesn't happen overnight?
yeah. It's when I first got into recovery, I thought I'll do this for 6 months and I'll be good. I'm good. I'll be on my way. And now it's taken a lifetime of practice. Also, where I find myself, I I couldn't have articulated nor envisioned this life. Um, and it takes time. Every time somebody does, every time I do the accountability, there's a change. I don't want to use the word incremental, but incremental seems to fit. Sometimes big, sometimes huge, sometimes eye-opening and life-changing. Other time incrementally, incrementally. When I asked, "Is my intent to live in peace?" 25 years ago, did not have the power that it has, or the awareness, or the experience that it has when I say it is my intent to live in peace. They're two completely different statements based on the experience I've had from that time, 25 years ago, to this moment. There's a accumulation of healing that happens. Just like there was an accumulation of trauma that caused me at 39 years old to get sick and tired and go into a meeting. I'm done. I don't want to do this anymore. I don't know. I'm beat.
Right.
I'm done. I don't know.
Well, I just add to that is that for me is dealing with that sense of impatience or that sense of, 6 months and I'm done, is where the value of the group is. There are many, 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 many values to doing this to work this in together with other people in a group. But one of the major values for me is that the group can show me what patience looks like when I can't do it for myself.
Wow.
And the group can say, okay, you fell down, you relapsed, you forgot, whatever. Okay, what do you want now?
And sometimes they can point out the improvements that I didn't realize.
Plus that, indeed.
John, whoa, just whoa, no, you're saying all this, but that's not what I'm seeing. I'm seeing this. Because again, it's subconscious. I still don't know. I still haven't been able to put it in the rational part. And there's an effective change happening. Sometimes I used to call it, I was blindsided by healthy behavior. It was
Right.
like, oh, that was me. I just did that. Oh, wow, look at that. Isn't that something? I didn't like go screaming and yelling. I just stood there. I remember one time looking in the mirror and not saying dumbass. That was a remarkable moment. It's like I looked and I go, oh shoot, I didn't say anything derogatory. And then a couple of years ago, I looked in the mirror and I had this cheeky grin and I go, wow, I like who I've become. Oh my God. Oh my God. Wow, listen to that.
Now what?
Yeah. Because I want more, Marty.
Yeah.
I want it all.
I want to share this paragraph from Gabor Mate's book.
Yes.
I think it's apropos of what we're talking about. He says, the intellect becomes a far more intelligent tool when it allows the heart to speak, when it opens itself to that within us that resonates with the truth rather than trying to reason with it. And then he quotes from the book, The Little Prince. He says, and now here is my secret, a very simple secret, the fox advises the little prince in Antoine de Saint-Exupéry's beloved tale. It is only with the heart that one sees rightly. What is essential is invisible to the eye. The intellect, then Mate goes on to say, the intellect can see verifiable facts, provided that denial doesn't obscure or distort them, as it often does to protect the wounded or pain-averse parts of us. It is possible to claim, declare, and insist on facts, all without a scintilla of what I'm calling truth. The kind of truth that heals is known by its felt sense, not only by how much, quote, sense it makes.
There you go. I often quote Einstein, look for that thing that doesn't make sense. Look
right.
For that it doesn't make sense. Yeah.
Well, that's one of our principles in our accountability work too, is it doesn't have to make sense.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I often say, well, if I'm making sense to you right now, I'm going to change it up.
Yeah, right.
It's like I'm now participating in whatever is going on over there.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. It's like, oh.
Well, we've come to the end of another podcast.
Okay.
Any last thoughts before we wrap it up?
I like the way you put that together about the subconscious, and it was hopefully it'll make a difference. People will hear it. This work is so sometimes ethereal, and yet I experience it on a practical, visceral level, and I want that for more and more people.
Well, so just to underscore that, want to let everybody know who's watching this, particularly if you're a newcomer, that there are 5 accountability practice meetings throughout the week, all on Zoom. And They're Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Saturday. Most in the evening, but one's in the afternoon, two are in the morning. So actually, two in the evening, one in the afternoon, two in the morning, because our friend Duffy is starting a new meeting on Tuesday mornings coming up. So if you'd like more information about those meetings, or you'd like to get the Zoom room URL, please shoot me or John a note. Our email address will be at the end of this podcast, and we'd love to have you join us, because as John was saying, this can seem esoteric when we're talking about it, but when we're doing it, it's a whole different experience. So we invite you to come and kick the tires of the accountability work.
Yeah.
All right,
I would
John,
just say,
thank you.
You're
ahead.
welcome. Where the rubber meets the road.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Which is a perfect way to end this, as you're sitting there in your beautiful new mobile home.
Yep.
So enjoy your travels, and we'll see you in a couple of weeks.
You got it.
Thanks, John.
Bye-bye.